So I wanted to take a minute and talk about a few quotes from a famous philosopher, our warmest, fuzziest, cuddliest, sort of most inspirational philosopher. Of course, I'm talking about Nietzsche. But these are three quotes, and admittedly, they are three of the most cliche quotes you're going to find from Nietzsche. But they're three quotes that I think hold something special in store when you're talking about a new beginning, when you're talking about a new year, when you're talking about taking on new sets of goals, things like that. One, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Of course, one of the most cliche quotes you're going to find from Nietzsche. Not quite as cliche as quote number three, but without a why, I think it is possible for your why to be transitory, for your why to be the search of a why. If you have a search going for your why, I think that it is possible to still bear almost anyhow. Figuring out what the self is for, figuring out what the individual is to do, figuring out what it is that your life will be, by which your life will be consumed. But a question I have here, a question that I think is sort of begged by the quote, is there just one why? A why. He who has a why. Is it possible to have more why than one? Sort of the obvious answer here, the why, which is obviated by a statement um, so brass as this, so brash as this, is that the why is often found in other folks, your lover, your child, your family, etc. But I think that's possibly too on the nose. I think that it's possible that that is too obvious a statement. And of course, those things, those people are people for whom we would do anything. But there is, I think, necessitated um, something from the soul, as idiotic as that might sound, that is a mission, not just someone else's survival, not just someone else's joy or raising a child in a loving home, things like that. But it's often said, I can't remember from where the quote comes. I think maybe it's Martin Luther King Jr. off the top of my head. Um, that a person who has nothing for which to live is not fit to live. A person who has nothing for which they would die is not fit to live. It's also said, another one of these types of quotes that gets flung around is that someone should be ashamed to die until they have added to the human experience, until they have made the world better in some way. Is that an intrapersonal goal? Or is that a mission? For me, literature, writing, uh, criticism on writing, examining words, things like that. Um, the second quote here, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. If this why mentioned or necessitated by that first quote is not familial, is not found in another person, no one else is going to hear your why. No one else is going to hear those things. You will look insane pursuing your why to someone who has no idea what you're talking about. And I think, look, this is easy enough when it's Susie Q in the comments on a YouTube video. Susie Q asking you why do you talk about Emily Dickinson so much? You know, that's easy. Shove it, Susie Q. But the awful truth about a quote such as this is that those who don't hear the music might be the people who the first answer for number one um, is important. It might be those people to whom your goals are not shared, the people who for whom you find your life worth living do not see the importance in the goals that you have, in the why that you're living for, which is not them. That's a sticky situation, isn't it? Someone so important to you does not value the same thing that you value. How do you weigh those things? You have a person for whom you live, you have a thing for which you live. How do you weigh those things when contrasted with one another? And then possibly the most cliche of all cliche quotes that we get from um, Nietzsche: battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you. But do you really think that this quote is to be taken at face value? Do you really think that this is a decree from the will to power guy? Do you think that this is Nietzsche saying, hey, look, don't do this. Don't battle with monsters. Don't gaze into the abyss, because you'll become a monster, and the abyss will be gazing into you. Do you think that's really what he's saying there, at face value? I think he means it. I think Nietzsche very clearly means these things, but I do not believe that he is warding you away from them. This is the will to power guy. The will to power guy knows you have to be a monster. He's just saying, surely any of us have been in this type of situation before, very easily relatable to me from, for example, football. Football, when I was younger, there were always guys who would say, I'm going to come out for football this year. Okay. Have you been through two-a-days? Have you ever had a concussion? Have you ever been the smallest guy on the field at any given point in time and wondered, is this going to go well for me? Right? This is one of those type of things. This is Nietzsche strictly saying, hey, man, you're going to do battle with monsters, you're going to be a monster. But you've got to be a monster. And why do I pick these three quotes together? So, one of the things that has become sort of internet fodder recently, fairly recently, over the past couple years, is Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that Jordan Peterson says about being a monster is that it is important to be a monster, but not act like a monster. To be dangerous, but keep the danger put away. What does this mean? What does this mean if you have your why separated from another why? This means that you have to have your life, you have to have the tools to keep your life partitioned in some way. You have to have the tools you have to rise above. You have to rise above the circumstance. You have to rise above anyone who is willing to tell you, hey, you know, these things aren't good, right? And being able to say that, again, to Susie Q on the internet, not a big deal. How do you pick between things that are important to you, right? Um, or do you just have to be good enough? Do you just have to be strong enough? Do you just have to be worthy enough to be able to take all of these things on your back and carry them through the fire? And I think the reason I'm presenting these three quotes together is here we are, a week into a new year. Probably you've got goals, probably you've got your why, probably you've got a couple whys. Opportunities like this, where we are at a fresh start with something, are a good time to examine our whys.